Hello, and welcome to another edition of It's Just Me, hosted by Brent Fox. I'm going to be doing things a little differently. I'm going to try to shorten up my long form content. It was a suggestion made by, of course, a family member, and I'm just trying to make sure that this experiment actually goes successfully. So, without further ado, here we go. Now, what I basically wanted to get into were maybe four topics. The first being, of course, the Super Bowl. And then the second, we'll talk about Shakur Stevenson being stripped from the WBC. The third one, of course, is Errol Spence possibly fighting Tszyu. And then, possible fourth, we may get into some topics about my Pittsburgh Steelers, but we'll see. Now, of course, the first subject that we'll go ahead and tackle is the Super Bowl that recently took place on Sunday. All right, so of course the Super Bowl 60, which actually took place in the San Francisco area, the Seattle Seahawks secured their second Super Bowl trophy with a 29-13 win over, of course, the New England Patriots. So basically, as I mentioned prior to, this was actually going to be a defensive struggle, and it was initially. Now, of course, the turnovers that the Seattle Seahawks actually got from the New England Patriots helped pull the game out of reach. But again, it was a back and forth defensive struggle. As a matter of fact, I don't think any touchdowns were actually scored the first half. I think that the touchdowns that were actually made were, of course, in the second half, which was maybe the late third quarter, mid to late third quarter, and then, of course, the fourth quarter. There were some points that were actually exchanged at one point, touchdowns exchanged at one point. So, congratulations again to the Seattle Seahawks, and they actually played very well defensively. But I am not mad at all that Kenneth Walker III actually got the MVP. I think he ended up with, I think it was 27 carries for 135 yards. Now, unfortunately, no touchdown, but his runs actually put the Seattle Seahawks in very good positions to score. It's just, unfortunately, the New England Patriots defense was good enough to actually bend but don't break and not allow a touchdown, but did allow field goals, which, given the circumstances, I think that was actually commendable. And I cannot believe I'm saying that about this particular team, because if you don't know, I despise this team very much. And for me to actually call them by name is very good on my part. I usually call them the team up in Boston, or that team, or those guys in Massachusetts, something like that. I don't really call them by their name. So, again, thank you, Seattle, very much for making sure that those people did not get a seventh Lombardi. So, all right. Now, of course, what people are actually talking about more than a game is the halftime show performed by Bad Bunny. I don't really have much to say on this, but what I will say is that I am very happy that he was able to do it in all Spanish. It is, his art is actually not art is not supposed to be interpreted by somebody else for you to interpret. And what that means is that art actually has to be interpreted by the person that's actually consuming it. And if you're not able to allow yourself to consume and then interpret the art for yourself, you're doing yourself a disservice. So even though I did not understand most of what he was actually saying, because I'm not that fluent in Spanish, the things that I did catch, were very profound. He did talk about the situation with the storm in Puerto Rico, and then he also talked about how people were gentrifying Puerto Rico. And I can definitely identify with that as a Dallas native. That is actually going on here at in our home. Now, you'll have to excuse the ice maker. I'm sorry. All right, we're just gonna roll with it. Now, of course, with art, again, it's up for the person that's actually consuming it to interpret their own way. And I think it's very important that that's emphasized. You interpret the art your own way. And again, with him being able to talk about powerful subjects like gentrification and what the storm actually did to Puerto Rico and how those actually intertwine was very important. And again, that does hit home for me because of what's actually going on here in Dallas. So just to kind of fill in the blanks here. Basically, Dallas in the 90s and early 2000s were pretty much densely populated with black people. Now, as time went on, of course, with wanting to have your kids live a better life and you're wanting to make sure that, you know, things are stable and okay, you're going to move out of the city into some of the suburbs. And with that particular migration, that left a gap for other people to actually come in, buy up the property, try and increase the value of it, and then, of course, have their own come in. And that is basically what happened with Dallas. So, for someone to actually shed light on a subject like that, to me, it takes a lot of courage. So, I commend Bad Bunny on actually talking about that. But from what I was not able to understand, you could pretty much interpret by what was actually going on. So I definitely appreciate the bold performance that he actually put on. Now, if I had to rank it against Kendrick Lamar's, of course, I'm going to be rooting for the home team. I'm not going to apologize about that. Anyway, I also wanted to discuss the egregious transaction of the WBC stripping Shakur Stevenson. This is inexcusable. Mauricio Suleiman, and I'm going to call him by name, Mauricio Suleiman, who was supposed to be the chair of the WBC, had performed a very personal and a very petty thing and as backlash for Terrence Crawford speaking out against the WBC. Of course, it is very well known that Shakur Stevenson and Terrence Crawford have a very close relationship. And Shakur, I believe, was stripped last week. Now, having said that, there has actually been some leaked information stating that Mauricio Suleiman actually wound up calling the lawyer for Shakur Stevenson, Josh Dublin. So in that particular call to Josh, he opened up and asked, what relationship does Shakur have with Terrence Crawford? That has nothing to do with, absolutely nothing to do with him paying his sanctioning fees, with him actually earning that particular belt, with him actually wanting to decide whether or not to maintain that belt. Nothing to do with that at all. After that particular conversation, I guess Mauricio grew frustrated and then wanted to turn around and actually double the charges of the other sanctioning bodies in order for Shakur to try to keep his belt. Then when that didn't work, Suleiman ultimately stripped Shakur Stevenson from his 135-pound WBC title. Now, having said this, that type of that type of unprofessionalism should not be accepted at all. And shout out to Coach Hudson who actually touched on this. I also believe that if the Black WBC champions unify together and actually drop their particular belts simultaneously, I think Mauricio will get the message at that particular point. Now, whether or not that actually gets done, who knows? Now, I do know that Bruce Shushu Carrington just won his belt and he wants an opportunity to actually remain a champion. But in some cases, a statement actually has to be made. And I certainly wouldn't ask Shushu to do something that he's completely uncomfortable with. But what I will suggest is that if you are unified and stand together and let these particular people know that this is unacceptable and you're willing to sacrifice something, I believe that they will actually have to improve their behavior. So it's just something to think about. Now, also in other boxing news, Errol Spence is pretty much either signing on or set to face Tszyu. Now, I'm not sure whether or not that's actually going to happen. And the reason for that is because the source that's actually announcing it is none other than swing and miss Mike Coppinger. Now, Mike Coppinger has actually been very inaccurate about some of these fights, particularly the fight between, or the alleged fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua that never came to pass. There have been other instances where he has actually swung and missed as well. And I for one am not going to run with the narrative that, this guy has pretty much done his homework and all of that other stuff and, it just not be a thing. When I get more information from a reliable source, then I'll pretty much try to confirm it here on this particular channel. But because Mike Coppinger, who is notoriously known for actually being inaccurate, and he's, unfortunately, he does things to actually get headlines, or he tries to be first and then misses. This is his track record. I am not saying this to actually just hit him over the head or try to bash him or anything. These are facts. He has been actually inaccurate in reporting some of these fight signings. So again, I don't necessarily trust that. And then when maybe a more reliable source comes in, then I'll go ahead and go with it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to make sure that I talked about was maybe some news about my Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, we have actually, since the signing of Mike McCarthy, we've actually been pretty quiet for the most part. We have signed some pretty unfamiliar names and faces as far as coaching staff goes. And while I don't have like all the names for all the new coaches, I am trying to remain optimistic about having these people here, but I think the signing for Pecco as a defensive line coach is pretty good. The other gentleman, I think Angelino or I don't want to mess his name up. I think, he was a Vikings passing coordinator last year. Now he's the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. I'm curious to see how that would actually work out. I would also be, again, curious to see if we do actually wind up having Aaron Rodgers back. And if not, what we would actually do as a contingency. Now, I think that we're probably going to need to know whether or not Aaron Rodgers is coming back before the draft. If he does not, let us know that he is coming back or he's not coming back before the draft. I would actually suggest moving on. There's no need to actually just try to have him keep us in suspense and all of this other stuff. Now, what I will say, and I will go ahead and say this publicly, is I do apologize to Aaron Rodgers. Yes, you heard me. I apologize to Aaron Rodgers. I thought that he was actually going to wind up being a team cancer and he was bad for the team and things of that nature. I apparently was not. So, again, I apologize to Aaron Rodgers for looking at things and then assuming from his past behavior or his previous stops with an S, okay? It did not end well in Green Bay, nor did it end well in New York, which was obvious. But again, I apologize for assuming something that, of course, was untrue here in Pittsburgh. And when I say here in Pittsburgh, I mean, of course, in Pittsburgh, excuse me. I'm in Dallas. Now, actually, I think that's it. I think I'm going to just go ahead and wrap up. Hey guys, I really do appreciate you for tuning in, and I just want to make sure that I give some shout outs to my brothers before I leave. Please check out Coach 67 Sports TV. He has a plethora of shows that come on YouTube and all social media platforms. He is the best content creator on the planet for the Southern University. I also have my other brother, Jared O. 11 Green. He has a plethora of shows as well, from a black man's perspective, that usually comes on YouTube on 10:30 a.m. Saturdays. And then he also has a Southern Baller show that usually comes on 3:30 p.m. Central Standard Time on Sundays. Y'all actually pick up, y'all actually may want to go ahead and pick up some adult beverages from Old Hillside. I believe their website is www.oldhillsidebourboncompany.com. All right, y'all. This has been Brent Fox with It's Just Me, of course. And I will see y'all the next time.